You are about to walk one of the deadliest roads in American history, a road not carved by kings or soldiers, but by ordinary families chasing a dream, not by war but by hunger and faith. The Oregon Trail, 2,000 miles of dust and promise, stretches before you. You see it now, wagons rocking over open prairie, thunderheads piling above like mountains of ash, the cry of a child lost in the wind. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive, and I'd love to hear from you too. Where are you listening from and what time is it right now? Now, together we slip into the journey. Independence, Missouri, April 1843. The town smells of rain and iron. Hooves clatter over wooden bridges, and the air hums with the sound of wheels being tested, barrels being sealed, dreams being weighed against fear. You stand beside your wagon, hands cracked from weeks of preparation, listening to the steady breathing of your oxen. They are slower than horses, but they endure more. That is what you've been told. Endurance wins the West. Someone nearby counts the wagons. 90, 100, maybe more. By dawn, you'll all move as one. The Great Migration of 43. Newspapers will later call it. But right now it is just people, farmers, carpenters, widows, children, all with the same tremor in their voices when they say the word Oregon. You load the last of the flour sacks. The smell of salt pork lingers. Every pound matters. 2,000 miles means 2,000 chances for something to break. Your neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, insists on bringing a cast iron stove. You can almost hear the wagon groan at the thought. Someone laughs. Someone else prays. A fiddler plays near the tavern. A broken tune about home. For many, this is the last town they will ever see. You think of the map tacked on the wall of the trading post. Rivers like veins. The trail faintly traced in red pencil. Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon. No one knows exactly what lies between the lines. Letters from trappers speak of buffalo herds so vast they shake the earth. Others warn of quicksand, fever, or arrows in the dark. The truth is somewhere in the dust between. A child runs past with a tin cup, chasing a dog. The bell of the general store clangs as another family buys musket caps and lye soap. Somewhere, a man is arguing about routes, the South Pass or the North Platte. His words rise and fade like a storm you can feel coming. At night, you sit by the fire with your small circle, 5 wagons, all bound together by circumstance. Someone tells of Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, the missionaries who crossed these plains years before, the first white woman to make it to Oregon alive. Letters say she wrote of meadows like paradise. You wonder if paradise ever comes without a price. The stars above Missouri shine so hard they look carved. You think of the homes left behind, the narrow fields, the debts, the same rain that fell every spring without mercy or change. West means freedom. West means forgetting. But as the fire dies, it also means uncertainty so vast it presses on your ribs. Morning comes cold and silver. A trumpet sounds, one long note that echoes through the camp. Men shout. Oxen strain against yokes. Wheels turn, creak, lock, and turn again. The trail begins not as a road, but as a wish carved into mud. Your boots sink an inch deep with every step. The first mile feels endless. Someone drops a box of pins, someone else a Bible. You pick up neither. The sound of wagons becomes a rhythm. Wood, metal, breath, whip. By noon, the town has vanished behind you, swallowed by prairie. May 1st, 1843. The grass rises knee-high. The air smells of sage and wet earth. You travel beside a widow named Eliza, her hands always busy with stitching. Her wagon carries 2 small boys and a cradle she never speaks of. The sun burns through thin clouds, and for the first time you feel the west, a wind so wide it feels holy. At camp that night, smoke curls in hundreds of small spirals. Pots clatter. Someone sings about Kentucky. The laughter hides nerves, but it also keeps people alive. A man named Caleb tells you how. 10 years earlier, a group tried this same trail and lost half their wagons before Fort Laramie. Still, he says, staring into the fire, it sets better than dying poor. A coyote cries somewhere far off. The oxen snort and shift, their shadows long under the moon. You lie beneath the wagon, the boards above creaking in the cool night. The smell of raw wood and leather mingles with the scent of your own sweat. Sleep comes slowly, a thin veil between past and what waits ahead. You dream of rivers that never end, of grass bending forever east and west. When you wake, the horizon is already trembling with heat. You climb onto the wagon seat, take the reins, and whisper the first words of the long road. Get up. The oxen move. The prairie widens until it swallows the sky. By the second week of travel, May 1843, you've learned to tell the time by the angle of light on the oxen's backs, the smell of the grass warming under sun. Independence lies 100 miles behind, and the world has become motion, wheels, dust, and the soft thud of hooves sinking into damp earth. When the wagons stop at midday, the air trembles with heat. A man's voice calls out the day's count, 15 miles give or take, and you begin to understand what distance means when every inch is earned. By now, the caravan is a moving village, nearly 1,000 people, 200 wagons, and more livestock than you can count. You ride alongside men who once built churches, mended boots, or farmed land so thin it could barely grow beans. Out here, everyone becomes something else. The blacksmith becomes a wheelwright, the preacher a nurse, the children shepherds of dust. The sound of laughter carries far, but it fades quickly into wind. May 10th, 1843, Kansas River crossing. The river is wider than you expected, the current sly and fast beneath its calm surface. Ropes are stretched, barrels sealed, oxen prodded into water that smells of clay and silt. Someone shouts as a wagon tips, crates tumbling, a churned chaos of wood and shouts. For a moment you can taste the river on your tongue, bitter, alive, indifferent. Later, on the far bank, the wagons dry in sunlight, while smoke from 100 campfires curls upward, blending into haze. Records will later claim that fewer than a dozen wagons were lost that year, but the letters of survivors tell of more, of drowned calves, vanished tools, and the quiet afterward that no one could shake. You sit by a fire, boots steaming, watching a boy chase sparks with a stick. Someone tells you it's 15 miles to the next creek, and 250 to Fort Kearney. The numbers mean less than the rhythm of travel. 4 a.m., wake up, harness the team, eat cornbread, move until the sun burns white, stop, gather dung for fuel, cook, sleep. The sky becomes your ceiling. At night, the wagons form a circle, not a perfect one, more like a ragged necklace. Inside, fires flicker, and someone strums a fiddle. You eat salt pork and beans, the taste sharp, the texture like memory. Beyond the ring of light, coyotes sing. Sometimes you imagine they're laughing at you, soft, endless laughter rolling across the plains. Eliza hums as she mends a shirt by firelight, her needle flashing. The two boys sleep beside the wagon wheel. Across from you, Caleb sharpens a knife and mutters about buffalo. They say herds used to stretch for miles, he says. You could walk a day on their backs. You look out at the darkness and try to imagine a landscape alive with muscle and breath. Now, only silence and stars. Every few days, riders go ahead to scout water. Sometimes they return with news of a stream, sometimes not. Once they come back with a strange story, wagon tracks that seem to end abruptly in a field. No sign of where the travellers went. Maybe they turned back, someone suggests. Or maybe the prairie swallowed them. No one laughs. By May 20th, the prairie grasses stand shoulder high, rolling in waves. Children run through them. their heads vanishing and reappearing like swimmers in an ocean of green. The air smells of sage and animal musk. You see your first buffalo skull, bleached to ivory, half buried in dirt. It looks peaceful, almost smiling. One afternoon, a storm builds so fast it feels like a trick of the eye. The sky turns black-blue, thunder crawling across the horizon. Wagons halt, tarps thrown, animals tethered close. The rain comes sideways, a roaring sheet that blurs everything. You huddle beneath canvas, water dripping onto your lap, the smell of wet rope and fear thick in your nose. Someone's lantern goes out. Someone else prays. When the storm passes, a wagon is overturned, but no one hurt. You help lift it upright, hands raw, shoulders burning. The sun returns as if nothing happened. The trail gleams silver, steam rising from earth. That night, the sky clears so sharply it hurts to look. You count more stars than you thought possible. A few miles east, a fire flickers alone, one wagon that fell behind. They'll catch up tomorrow, maybe. You remember how the captains told you to travel close, but space always grows between people on this trail, as if the land itself wants to scatter you. In the morning, a rider approaches, dust-caked, his voice hoarse. He says 2 oxen were struck by lightning near Big Blue River. You nod, say nothing. Out here, loss already feels ordinary. Late May, near Big Blue River, Nebraska Territory. The prairie rolls toward the horizon, dotted with tiny white blooms like spilled flour. You pass a cluster of graves, wooden markers leaning, dates barely visible. 1842, 1841. Someone ties a small piece of cloth to one post, a gesture that feels both foolish and sacred. Records suggest the trail already carried thousands before you, though none kept perfect count. You begin to notice patterns, wagon ruts, deeper where water once stood, faint tracks of older caravans crossing northward. Sometimes you see abandoned objects, a broken chair leg, a boot without a sole, an iron pot dented flat. Each one a story too small for history to remember. At the next halt, the air smells faintly of smoke. In the distance, riders speak with a group of car people. Trade begins with hesitation. Tobacco, cloth, metal tools for dried meat and berries. You watch, curious, as the exchange flows with a rhythm older than the trail itself. Later, as dusk comes, you think of how the journals describe this region, unclaimed land. But it never was unclaimed. Not really. The evening cools fast. You rub your hands together, the ache in your knuckles constant now. Fatigue lives in your bones, but also a strange calm around you. 1,000 small fires shimmer, each one a fragile defiance against the vastness. You hear laughter again, light, brief, and gone. A man named Thomas reads from a Bible, his voice low and steady. Eliza's boys chase each other between wagons until she gathers them close. Caleb sits sharpening that same knife, the motion hypnotic. The wind smells of ashes and wild flowers. You feel time stretch, thin and transparent, as if the world itself were holding its breath. When you lie down, the ground is still damp from yesterday's rain. The canvas above you flaps softly. In the distance, frogs sing by the river. You trace the path westward in your mind. The Platte River next, then Fort Kearny, then beyond. Mountains that few have seen. 2,000 miles to go. The thought should terrify you, but instead it soothes. Every mile is a kind of forgetting. Every horizon a promise not yet broken. You close your eyes, the wind moves through the grass like a whisper, and you imagine it saying your name, June 1843. Along the Platte River, Nebraska Territory, the land opens so wide it seems to tilt toward the horizon. Every morning you wake to the same wind, the same whispering grass, the same blue vault of sky stretching forever east to west. For days now, you followed the Platte, a river so broad and shallow that travelers joke it's a mile wide and 6 inches deep. The joke wears thin when oxen sink into the mud and wagons tilt dangerously sideways. The air smells of algae, wet rope, and hot iron. Mosquitoes rise in clouds. When you breathe, you taste grit. By now, your clothes are stiff with dust. It seeps into everything. Your blankets, your bread, the corners of your teeth. The wheels hum a rhythm you no longer notice. It lives in your bones. Children sing songs to count the miles. Their voices cracked but bright. The days blur, divided only by the shape of the clouds and the tilt of sunlight. Time here feels strange, measured not by hours but by hunger and distance. You pass the first real marker of progress. A broken sign nailed to a post, half sunk in mud. Platte Crossing, 40 miles. The letters are fading, carved years ago by someone whose bones might already rest under the soil you're walking. The historian Francis Parkman will one day write that this road felt as broad as the sea and as featureless as eternity. You wouldn't argue. Sometimes you see other caravans ahead, tiny moving dots glinting where the sun catches metal rims. You know that if you counted the wagons on this trail between May and July, you'd find thousands. Records suggest nearly 1,000 people set out with your Great Migration of 1843. But each week more join from towns behind. The Oregon Trail is becoming a river of humanity, 2,000 miles long. At midday the river forks, and you stop to rest the animals. The air trembles with heat. Oxen collapse onto their knees, groaning softly. Eliza sits in the shade of her wagon wheel, wiping her hands with a rag already blackened with dirt. "My boys think this is forever," she murmurs. "They think we'll never stop moving." You glance at the endless prairie and wonder if she might be right. A group of Pawnee men appear on the far bank, watching quietly their horses like dark brushstrokes against the grass. No one reaches for a rifle. One rider from your caravan, a trader from Illinois, walks across the shallows and offers tobacco. After a tense moment, laughter breaks the stillness. Quick and human, they trade dried meat for buttons and sewing needles. When the Pawnee ride off, dust swirls behind them, glowing gold in the sun. By June 12th, the caravan settles into a pattern older than memory. Wake before dawn, eat cold biscuits. Move, at night, circle the wagons, boil river water, sleep. Some nights you dream of rain that never comes, other nights of endless cornfields and voices calling from home. The ache in your shoulders has become a familiar companion. You begin to learn the prairie's moods, the way the wind shifts just before rain, how the sky dims with a faint green hue before a storm. Once, near Grand Island, the air turns electric, birds vanish. The hair on your arms lifts, then thunder explodes so close it shakes the ground. You shout to Eliza to cover the boys. Oxen panic, ropes snapping, a wagon top rips like paper. Lightning flashes, carving white scars in the dark. When it ends, 2 mules are dead, and the smell of ozone lingers metallic and sharp. Later you write their names on a scrap of paper you'll probably lose before Oregon. Still you feel compelled to mark them. Morning brings silence too perfect to trust. The prairie steams, alive again. You find wild sunflowers near camp and tuck one into the wagon's canvas, a flicker of colour against all that brown. June 18th, 1843. Near Fort Kearny site, you reach a bend in the Platte where the banks rise into soft bluffs. A few men climb to the top and wave hats. The view makes them laugh, dizzy with the scale of it. From up there you can see the wagons stretching for miles, bright dots in the haze. A traveller from Ohio, Mr. Dalton, keeps a diary. He says the site looks like the backbone of a white serpent crawling west. Fort Kearny itself isn't much yet, just a few rough cabins and a flag snapping in the wind. Soldiers sell flour, salt and whiskey. You trade a knife for a tin of coffee, precious beyond gold. The smell of roasted beans fills camp that night, cutting through the stink of hides and sweat. You drink it slowly, eyes half closed as the sound of fiddles and laughter floats over the prairie. For a brief hour, it feels like a real town. But towns are illusions out here. By morning, Only ruts remain, fresh ones layered over the ghosts of last year's travellers. You follow them west. A discarded cradle lies by the roadside, one leg broken clean off. No one stops to pick it up. As June wanes, the land begins to change. Grass thins, replaced by patches of sand and stone. The air grows drier. You hear fewer birds, see fewer trees. Wood becomes precious. People burn dried buffalo chips for cooking fuel. The smell pungent but strangely comforting. You'll remember it years later, the way it clung to clothing like smoke from 1,000 forgotten fires. By June 25th, fatigue becomes a permanent state. A boy in another wagon falls ill. Stomach cramps, vomiting, fever. The word cholera passes through the camp like a chill. People whisper that it came up the river from St. Louis, riding on barrels of water. No one knows for sure. They bury the boy near the riverbank at dawn. No hymn, no words, only the sound of shovels biting clay. Later, someone scratches his name into a piece of driftwood. Thomas, age 7. You think of how many such markers will one day line this road. Thousands, maybe more. And yet the caravan moves on. There's no choice. The prairie demands motion. At dusk the sky burns copper. The Platte glows red under the setting sun, as if carrying fire instead of water. A wind rises, dry and full of whispers. You listen closely, half believing you hear voices in it, echoes of those who came before. That night, you camp beside a shallow bend in the river. Fireflies drift like embers through tall grass. Caleb passes you a tin cup of watered whiskey. Another 100 miles, he says, and we'll see Chimney Rock. You nod, though 100 miles might as well be forever. The boys chase fireflies while Eliza hums under her breath. You lean back against the wagon wheel, feeling the wood vibrate faintly with each gust of wind. The trail dust hangs in your hair, on your skin, in the creases of your palms. The air cools, heavy with the scent of river mud and sweat. When you close your eyes, you can still hear the endless creak of wheels, even in silence. Tomorrow you'll rise before dawn again. The river will guide you westward, shimmering like a vein of light through the plain. And as sleep settles, you think, perhaps the journey itself is the destination, the movement its own kind of faith. The stars blur above you, and somewhere in that vast dark sky, you imagine the shape of Oregon, soft hills, clear water, a home not yet real. For now there is only the road, the river, and the slow, steady pull of the west. Early July 1843, near Ash Hollow, along the North Platte, the air has changed. It carries the dryness of burned grass and something else, something sour, faintly sweet, like rotting fruit left too long in heat. You notice it before anyone speaks of sickness, before the first cough breaks through the steady rhythm of the trail. The wind itself feels heavy now, pressing down on the wagons as if it knows what's coming. The Platte has split, its northern branch a mirror of pale brown water. You follow it for days, its bends and oxbows reflecting a sky too wide to belong to anyone. Some nights the horizon burns with lightning, other nights with prairie fires so distant they seem like the heartbeat of another world. At dawn the ashes drift close enough that you smell them, sharp, metallic, mixed with the scent of ox sweat and flower dust. You've been travelling nearly 2 months. Your body has changed, leaner, darker, ribs visible beneath your shirt, hands cracked open like dry wood, but it's your eyes that have shifted most. You no longer search for comfort, only for signs. Clouds that promise rain, a bend in the river that means clean water, a hawk turning east that might mark game nearby. The world has narrowed to essentials. July 8th, 1843. The first case comes quietly. A man named Rutledge collapses beside his wagon at midday. His wife screams for water, but he can't keep it down. His skin turns grey in hours. Some say he was careless, that he drank from the wrong stream. Others whisper the word you've already feared: cholera. The disease rides this trail like an invisible passenger, moving faster than any wagon. By evening, Rutledge is gone. They bury him near a clump of cottonwoods. The air is still too respectful, as if even the wind knows to hold its breath. No one eats much that night. You taste ashes in your bread and wonder if it's from the fires or from fear. 2 days later, another wagon stops. A woman lies motionless beneath a quilt, her child crying beside her. Records from later years will suggest that cholera claimed up to 1 in 17 travellers along this road, but you don't need numbers. You can smell it now, the faint sweetness of decay mingling with the dust. People stop shaking hands. Cups aren't shared anymore. At every camp, someone mutters prayers in languages you don't recognize. The landscape mirrors your unease. The trail tightens between ridges, the wind trapped in narrow canyons. You reach Courthouse Rock on July 12th, a massive sandstone tower rising from the plain like a cathedral turned to stone. The emigrants ahead have carved names into its base, thousands of them, letters fading under wind and rain. You trace one, Warren, 1842. For a moment you imagine his face, then the image fades. The rock keeps its secrets. That evening, you hear coughing from the next camp over. By morning, they've buried 2 children. The sound of shovels again, always the same tempo. Slow, respectful, resigned. Eliza's boys watch silently. You notice her hiding her hands in her lap. The skin has begun to crack and bleed. You give her your last strip of clean cloth. Tell her to keep it wrapped. She nods without speaking. July 15th, near Chimney Rock. The formation appears at dawn, pale and ghostly through the haze. It rises nearly 300 feet, a spire of stone that every traveller on the Oregon Trail will someday remember. Someone calls it a lighthouse for the prairie, a marker that says, yes, you are still on the right road. The sight stirs something deep, a mix of relief and sorrow. You're halfway, perhaps less. Letters written later will call Chimney Rock the heart of the journey, the point where hope begins to flicker again. But for you it feels like a grave marker for all you've lost. That night, a windstorm strikes. Dust sweeps through camp like a living thing, filling mouths and eyes, snuffing lanterns. You wrap a scarf around your face, breathing through cloth that tastes of salt and fear. When it's over, the wagons look like fossils, half buried in ash. The next morning you help dig out a wheel mired to its hub. The earth here drinks everything, tears, sweat, the memory of rain. At noon, a herd of buffalo appears on the horizon, dark and slow-moving, thousands of them, rolling like a tide. The ground shakes beneath your boots. For a few moments the entire caravan stops to watch, this endless living mass that once ruled the plains. The hunters among you grip rifles, but no one fires. It feels wrong to disturb them, as though the land itself has allowed this one grace before the next trial. You reach Fort Laramie on July 19th, a collection of adobe walls and wooden roofs perched above the Laramie River. Soldiers wave you in, their uniforms stained by the same dust that coats your clothes. They sell coffee, ammunition, dried beans, and stories, most of them untrue. One man claims to have seen wagon tracks vanish into a mirage south of here. Another swears he's heard coyotes mimic human laughter. You half believe him. At the fort, you learn news, more cholera upriver, and rumors of early snow in the mountains. The words hang in the air like smoke. You patch a wheel, trade a cracked mirror for bacon, refill barrels with clean water, and leave before dawn. The fort's lanterns fade behind you, swallowed by rising sun. Beyond Laramie, the land hardens. Grass thins. The colour turns from green to gold to grey. You start climbing, slow, steady, always west. The oxen cough clouds of white dust with every breath. You find less water now, more bones. Some are animal, some not. July 23rd, 1843, South Pass. The wind here is sharp and cold even in summer. This is the crest of the continent, the invisible line dividing east from west. From this high saddle you see mountains rolling endlessly ahead, their peaks washed in snowlight. The journals of those who came before call this the doorway to the Pacific. You rest your hand on a stone and imagine the ocean beyond. But for now, all you can see is sky. That evening you camp near a spring. The water is clear, cold, perfect. Everyone drinks greedily, laughing as if the sickness never existed. For a few hours it feels like rebirth. Eliza's boys chase each other through sagebrush. Caleb plays a slow tune on his fiddle, notes thin and haunting. You tilt your head back, watching clouds drift east, the direction you'll never return. But the land remembers what you try to forget. At dawn you pass another grave, small, unmarked except for a stick bound with ribbon. You wonder whose hands tied it, whose heart stayed behind. The air smells faintly of sage and smoke. By late July the trail turns rocky, the wagons jarring hard over stone. Your feet bleed in your boots. Yet beneath the exhaustion a strange calm takes root. You've survived 2 months, disease, storms, fear. You've begun to believe that endurance itself is a kind of faith. That night, as camp settles, you sit apart, watching the stars pulse above the ridge. A coyote's cry rises and falls. You think of the thousands who will follow this same trail in the years to come, the gold seekers, the settlers, the dreamers. They'll see your wagon ruts, your names carved in stone, and think the path was always there. But you know better. You've carved it with hunger, sweat, and hope. The wind moves through the sage, whispering against your skin. Somewhere behind you the graves of the sick lie under starlight, quiet and unremembered. Ahead lies the promise of Oregon, faint as dawn. You pull your blanket tight and breathe the thin air of the divide. The night smells of pine for the first time. It smells like a new world waiting. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive. Early August 1843, Western Wyoming Territory. The air feels thinner here, sharper, scented with sage and stone. The plains are behind you now, and the first real mountains rise like frozen waves against the sky. Their color changes with the light, gray at dawn, silver by noon, violet when the sun drops. Each ridge looks close enough to touch, until the next bend reveals another and another, endless as faith itself. The wagons groan louder on this ground. Axles squeal, animals stumble, and still you climb. The days have grown shorter, though the sun burns hotter at noon. Dust turns to grit, grit to gravel. Each footstep echoes off the rock like a small, stubborn heartbeat. At this altitude, every breath feels borrowed. Some days you can see snow on distant peaks, a white shimmer that feels both promise and warning. The elders in camp say if you see snow in August, winter will come early. You try not to believe them. You travel now through the land the maps call Sweetwater Valley. The name sounds gentle, but nothing here is gentle. The Sweetwater River twists through red rock and sagebrush, its surface flecked with white foam. The water tastes of minerals, cold and metallic, but clean. You follow its bends for days. By August 6th, the trail narrows into rough canyons. Wagons scrape stone walls. Oxen slip on uneven ground. Someone swears under their breath with each jolt. You begin to understand why letters home describe this part of the journey as the land that tests all things. In one canyon, a wheel splinters on a sharp rock, throwing a man from the seat. He lands badly, his leg twisted at an impossible angle. There is no doctor, only a preacher who learned a bit of medicine fighting fevers back east. The bone is set with a stick, wrapped in torn canvas. The man will ride in the wagon, now, silent with pain. You hear his wife crying softly at night. The days blend into a rhythm of climb and descent, up one ridge, down another. Each morning your shoulders ache from the reins. Each night your knees pulse with heat. You start to talk less, to conserve both breath and spirit. The children still chatter, still ask when they'll see Oregon. No one answers anymore. August 10th, Independence Rock. A granite monolith rises out of the valley. Smooth as glass, etched with hundreds of names, travelers call it the Great Register of the Desert. You run your fingers over the carvings. Whitman, Bridger, Clark, 1842. The stone is warm from the sun. Caleb helps you carve your own name, his knife trembling in your hand. For a moment it feels like immortality, this small act of claiming space in an unforgiving world. Eliza lays flowers, yellow wild asters, at the base of the rock for the ones who didn't make it this far. Her boys chase each other through the grass, their laughter cutting through the dry wind like birdsong. The sound almost breaks you. That evening, camp settles beside the Sweetwater. Fires reflect off the river in scattered sparks. Someone passes around a tin of coffee boiled to bitterness. The stories begin, some true, some made for courage. One man swears he saw Jim Bridger, the legendary mountain man, only a week ago near South Pass, living with the Shoshone and trading maps for bullets. Another claims he heard wolves singing to the moon in a language older than men. No one argues. Out here, truth and myth have learned to share a bed. The next morning, you wake to frost on the grass. August 11th. The first real chill of the season, and it bites, breath clouds in the air. The oxen shiver, steam rising from their flanks. You rub their necks with rough hands and whisper to them as if words could make them strong again. That day, you cross paths with a small band of Shoshone people traveling east. They come silently, like the wind itself, mounted on small, sturdy horses. One woman wears a necklace of carved bone that catches the light. The leader, a man with a red cloth bound around his arm, raises a hand in greeting. There is no fear in his eyes, only curiosity. Through gestures and broken words, trade begins, jerked meat for sugar, moccasins for metal tools. You notice the calm in their movements, how they waste nothing. Later, as they ride away, the woman looks back once, her face unreadable. You wonder what she sees, pilgrims or fools. That night, the temperature drops below freezing. The fire crackles weakly, fed by twisted sage roots and scraps of dried dung. Eliza's hands are raw from washing clothes in icy water. Caleb hums to keep warm. You stare at the stars until your vision blurs, trying to count how far you've come. Missouri feels like another lifetime. August 15th, Rocky Ridge. The climb begins before dawn. The ground turns to loose shale, slippery and sharp. Oxen strain against the yokes, nostrils flaring. Halfway up, one collapses, legs trembling. The whip cracks once, then again, but the animal doesn't move. Its eyes glaze with pain. You and Caleb unyoke it, say nothing, and watch as the rest of the train moves on. By nightfall, wolves will find what's left. You try not to listen. A day later, another wagon loses its axle. The owners decide to burn it rather than leave it whole for scavengers. The smell of scorched pine fills the air. People gather around the flames, faces orange in the light, as if warming their hands on the last traces of comfort. You think of all the wood being left behind, chairs, barrels, even a piano someone tried to carry this far. The road west devours everything unnecessary. August 18th. You camp beside a clear lake rimmed with reeds. A few trout leap in silver arcs, breaking the reflection of the sky. Children run to fetch water. Someone sings softly in the distance, a hymn carried from one wagon to the next. For the first time in weeks you feel something close to peace. But peace doesn't last. That night, snow begins to fall. Only a dusting fine as flour, but enough to hush every sound. You wake shivering, your blanket stiff with frost. It's too early for snow, the old ones say, their eyes tight with worry. The trail will climb higher still before it descends, and early storms can kill before autumn even begins. By August 20th, you reach the Continental Divide proper. The pass is broad and quiet, nothing like the towering ridge you imagined. Yet you can feel it, the shift of air, the tilt of land. Rain on one side flows east, on the other west, toward rivers you've never seen. You stand there in silence, a single breath caught between two worlds. Behind you, the Missouri Basin. Ahead, the Snake and Columbia. The Pacific waits somewhere beyond. Eliza's boys gather small stones from the trail. For luck, they say. Caleb laughs, but his voice cracks with exhaustion. You all know that what lies ahead may be harder still. Steeper descents, deeper rivers, harsher weather, but you've crossed the backbone of the continent, and that means something. That night, you light a small fire with the last of the dry sage. The smoke curls straight up, thin and white. You watch it vanish into stars and think of how many have done this before, how many will never see the ocean. The world feels both vast and intimate, as if the trail itself breathes through you. You lie back on hard earth, your blanket wrapped tight, your heart slow and steady. The wind whispers through the grass, the same old words it's whispered since the first wagon rolled west. Keep moving, and under that endless frost-tipped sky, you promise you will. Late August 1843, western slope of the Rockies, entering Idaho territory. The trail begins to tilt downward now, but the relief is short-lived. The descent is worse than the climb. The ground turns to gravel, shifting under the weight of the wagons. The brakes smoke with friction. You can smell the scorched wood and iron, a bitter perfume of struggle. Oxen stumble on loose shale, their flanks streaked with white dust and sweat. The air grows warmer again, yet the wind carries the cold memory of snow from behind. For the first time in weeks you can feel the land changing. Mountains fade into ridges, ridges into deep valleys filled with pine and sage. The sound of running water returns, distant at first, then near enough to hear the steady rush of the Snake River. That name alone sends a ripple of unease through camp. The old trappers' tales have made it mythic. Deep, swift, unpredictable. But water means life, and thirst has begun to creep into every thought. The last week of August brings a heat you didn't expect. The sun feels closer, as if you've descended into its lap. Dust thickens in your throat until each breath tastes like copper. You ration what little water remains in the barrels. Each sip feels like guilt. The oxen's tongues hang loose, their eyes rolling. Flies gather at the corners of their mouths. The smell of them, salt fur, exhaustion, fills the trail. One afternoon, a child wanders too far from the wagons chasing a butterfly. You hear the cry before you see her. Eliza runs first, skirts lifted, her voice cracking. When they find the girl, she's unharmed, though her small hands tremble. But for those few minutes, the silence that falls over the caravan is complete, a shared terror. The plains behind taught you to fear disease and thirst. The mountains teach you to fear losing each other. By September 1st, food begins to run low. Flour barrels lighten. The bacon smells sour. Coffee, once a comfort, is gone. You chew hard biscuits and pretend they taste of bread. Some nights a rabbit or bird is caught, roasted over fire, the smell enough to make the whole camp turn their heads. Others barter quietly, cloth for lard, bullets for beans. You watch as men who once argued about scripture now whisper over sacks of meal like gamblers. At dusk, smoke curls from a dozen fires, thin and blue. The talk drifts toward rumors again. The three-island crossing ahead, where wagons must be ferried across the Snake. Some say the current there can pull oxen down in seconds. Others claim there's a shallow ford if you head north. Maps contradict each other, so do memories. The trail once sure beneath you has started to blur. That night, you dream of home. Not the real one, but a softer version made of wood smoke and bread, where everything lost still waits patiently. You wake before dawn, breath fogging in the chill. The stars above are fewer now, dimmed by early autumn haze. September 3rd. Raft River Junction. You meet another caravan heading east, ragged and reduced to half its size. Their leader's beard is white with dust. He tells you the Salmon River route ahead is impassable this season. Wagons overturned, oxen drowned. Head for the Boise, he says. It's longer but safer. His voice carries the weight of loss that doesn't need explaining. By September 5th, tempers start to fray. A man named Walsh refuses to wait for repairs to his wheel and pushes on alone. That night, his wagon fire burns like a tiny star in the distance, apart from the circle. In the morning, it's gone. You never see him again. The road winds through sagebrush flats and narrow gorges. The wind whistles low, like a whispering crowd. Some nights, voices echo strangely from the cliffs. You can't tell if they belong to your people or ghosts. Caleb says it's just the air shifting temperature, but you see how he glances over his shoulder more often now. On September 8th, you reach the banks of the Snake. The river is wider than imagination, boiling with silver currents and dark undertows. The air smells of silt and cold iron. Rocks glisten like wet bone. This is the crossing the guides warned you of. The one that eats wagons whole. The first attempt comes at dawn. 2 oxen swim strongly. A third panics and turns sideways. The wagon tips, crates bursting open like ribs. Bedding, clothes, a small tin toy, all gone in seconds. A woman screams her husband's name. The current swallows both. For the rest of the day, the camp is silent except for ropes creaking and water slapping hulls. By nightfall, half the wagons have crossed. The rest wait, lanterns flickering on the far bank like distant stars. You cross at sunset, gripping the side as the raft sways underfoot. Water climbs your boots, cold enough to numb. You can't breathe until you feel the scrape of gravel beneath the wheels. When you reach shore, Eliza touches your arm and exhales the faintest smile breaking through the grime. The next morning, the survivors bury the lost near the water. Someone carves names into a log and drives it into the mud. It leans with the current half submerged. No hymns this time, just the rush of the river, tireless and eternal. From there, the trail veers northwest, following the Boise River. The land turns golden with dry grass. Hills roll like sleeping beasts. You see deer sometimes at dawn, their eyes luminous in the grey light. The nights grow colder again, stars sharpening like glass. By September 12th, the caravan is smaller. 3 wagons have been abandoned, wheels splintered, animals too weak to pull. You leave them behind with silent blessings. Small mounds of belongings covered against the wind. The trail is lined with relics, now broken barrels, shoes, rusting kettles, and sometimes crosses carved into bark. You begin to realize that the road to Oregon is not a line of travel, but a line of graves. At one camp, a man gives up. He sits by the fire, staring at the flames, refusing to move the next day. When the wagons roll out, he's still there, humming softly. You don't ask what happened to him. Some losses are too private for memory. That evening, rain returns. The drops fall heavy and cold, drumming against the canvas. You sit beneath the wagon, watching rivulets carve paths through dirt. The sound is soothing at first, then lonely. When the fire hisses out, only the rain remains, steady as breathing. You think of all the sounds the trail has taught you. The whine of wind, the cough of animals, the crack of wood, and how each one means survival. September 15th. Boise Basin. You spot smoke in the distance. Another settlement or maybe soldiers. When you arrive, it's only 2 tents and a corral. A trader greets you with a grin missing 3 teeth. He sells salt at the price of gold, bullets at double. You trade anyway. The man laughs, saying, "The trail always gets its toll." His words linger long after you leave. The mountains fade behind you for good. Pines thin into scrub. Ahead lies the last stretch, the Columbia Plateau, harsh and open. Beyond that, the river to the Promised Valley. You should feel hope, but mostly you feel hollow, carved out by the miles. That night, the wind rises again, sweeping through camp, carrying the smell of wet ash. Caleb's fiddle lies silent. Eliza hums a lullaby to the boys, her voice frayed and beautiful. You stare at the embers until they become stars, until stars become nothing at all. Somewhere far to the west, the ocean waits. You imagine its sound, the hush, the breathing, and let that thought be the last before sleep. Late September 1843. Along the Columbia Plateau, the air smells of burnt sage and cold rain. The land has flattened again, but it feels emptier than ever. Wide plains scattered with stones, no trees, just the distant shimmer of the horizon that refuses to move closer. You have crossed more than 1,000 miles, and the world has become both vast and intimate. Every sound known by heart, the groan of wood, the rasp of rope, the sigh of wind against canvas. The river ahead, the Columbia waits like a final test. You wake each morning to frost edging the wagon wheels, thin and sharp. The oxen move slower now, ribs visible beneath their hides. Men walk beside them instead of riding. Women's skirts are crusted with mud. Children no longer play. When the sun climbs, the heat still cuts, but by dusk it falls below freezing. It is a season caught between fire and ice, and it burns through every living thing. September 22nd. The first sight of the Columbia comes suddenly, a band of silver cutting through the dark basalt cliffs. The travellers behind you gasp as if seeing salvation. The journals will later call it a river, as wide as a dream and as deadly as truth. It is both. The sound reaches you before the sight of it. A deep, continuous roar, water grinding against rock. You walk toward it, breath shallow, and the wind carries the smell of wet stone and pine. The path down to the shore is treacherous. Wagons tilt dangerously, brakes screeching. At one curve a wheel slips. The wagon topples, spilling barrels and blankets down the slope. Miraculously, no one dies, but you can't shake the image of it, belongings scattering like bones. You help lift the frame upright. Hands raw. The owner, an old man from Tennessee, stares at the wreckage and murmurs, "Guess Oregon just got lighter." His laugh cracks halfway through. By the time you reach the banks, the decision must be made: follow the river west, building rafts to float the wagons, or climb north along the overland road toward the Dalles, where cliffs rise like teeth and the trail narrows to a thread. Both paths are deadly. Letters from last year's emigrants tell of wagons crushed in rapids, of rafts splintered on rocks, of oxen collapsing midstream. Others speak of families stranded in snow near Mount Hood. The captains argue late into the night, their voices rising over the hiss of fire. You sit apart, watching sparks drift upward into darkness. Eliza sits beside you, arms wrapped around her knees. "If we stop now," she whispers, "winter will take us." You nod. The choice isn't really a choice at all. West, always west. September 25th, near Fort Boise. The settlement is little more than a cluster of cabins, but it smells of smoke and bread, a smell that nearly makes you weep. A few Hudson's Bay traders live here, French and Metis, their faces lined like maps. They sell ropes, flour, and warnings. One man, with a scar running down his cheek, tells you the Columbia rises without mercy. "Better the mountain road," he says. "At least the rocks don't move." Another swears the river is quicker, if the weather holds. You look at the grey clouds piling on the horizon, and understand that weather is a fragile thing. You spend a day mending wheels and building crude rafts. The wood creaks when nailed, green and soft. Caleb tests one, pushing it out into the shallows, where the current takes it instantly. He pulls it back, cursing softly. "We'll tie them together," he says. "They'll hold." His hands shake when he lights his pipe. That night you hear a strange sound, the river booming in the dark, deep and endless, like a giant breathing. The wind off the water smells of distance. It feels as though the world is changing again, folding itself towards some conclusion you can't yet see. September 27th. Morning fog clings low over the river. The first raft goes out, carrying 3 wagons, 12 people, and a lifetime of faith. You watch it drift, the figures small and fragile against the vast current. For a while it moves smoothly, then jolts sideways. A shout, a crack of timber, and it spins. You see one man leap into the water, arms thrashing. The raft strikes a hidden rock, splits, and half of it vanishes under white spray. The survivors crawl to shore 2 miles downstream. The dead are never found. By evening, the debate ends. The mountain road wins. The wagons that can still roll will climb north toward the Dalles. You lash your possessions tight. Leave behind a chest of broken dishes and a chair. No one wants weight anymore. The trail snakes upward into cliffs of black basalt, cut by wind so fierce it hums through your clothes. The wheels grind against rock. Every jolt feels personal. At night, fires flicker on narrow ledges. The stars are pale behind clouds. A man named Dalton, the diarist, mutters that he saw a light on the opposite cliff, a lantern swinging in midair too far from any camp. A ghost wagon, someone jokes weakly. But you've seen enough to know the trail collects ghosts the way trees collect wind. October 1st. The Dalles. The Columbia bends here, turning west toward the sea. The cliffs rise sheer, dark columns shining with rain. You can smell the Pacific now, or maybe you only imagine it. The tang of salt mixed with pine. The settlement below is a blur of smoke and shouting. Dozens of emigrants crowd the banks, building new rafts, arguing, praying. Supplies are gone. Hope feels like a thin currency. You trade your last piece of cloth for a small sack of flour. It smells faintly of mold but tastes like heaven when baked on a flat stone. Eliza's younger boy grows feverish, his breath fast and shallow. She presses a damp cloth to his head, murmuring songs from home. You sit nearby, useless, listening to the wind batter the tent. In the morning the fever breaks, but he's weaker now. She smiles faintly, whispering, "He'll see, Oregon." You can't bring yourself to say you're not sure. October 3rd. The final crossing begins. Rafts, repaired and rebuilt, creak under the weight of wagons and animals. The water is high from recent rain, churning white against black rock. The sound drowns everything. The shouts, the orders, the prayers. You hold tight to a rope as the raft jerks forward. Cold spray hits your face. For a moment you feel the bottom scrape, then release. The river takes you. It lasts only minutes. Rapids twist you sideways, a barrel breaks loose and spins away. Caleb yells something you can't hear. Then suddenly, calm, the current eases and you drift into still water near the far bank. A laugh bursts out of you, half shock, half disbelief. You've made it. When the last wagon lands, the survivors collapse on the shore. No one cheers. They simply sit, staring at the water that nearly kept them. Behind you, the mountains fade into mist. Ahead lies a valley of pine and fog, the smell of damp earth rising like incense. That night, for the first time in months, the wind carries no dust, no ash, only the scent of rain on leaves. You sit by a small fire, hands trembling as you break the last of the hardtack in half, and share it with Eliza. The taste is plain, almost sweet. She smiles, eyes hollow but alive. "Tomorrow," she says softly, "we'll see it." You nod, unable to speak. Tomorrow, the end of the road. You stare into the fire until the flames blur, until they become memory. The sound of the river lingers in your ears, steady, eternal. You wonder if you'll ever stop hearing it. October 5th, 1843, the Willamette Valley, Oregon country. Dawn lifts through mist like breath escaping a sleeping giant. You wake to the sound of dripping water, not rain but dew sliding from pine needles onto canvas. The air is cool, wet and soft after so many months of dryness. You push aside the flap of your tent, and the sight makes you still a valley of green, endless and glistening, rolling toward a horizon that finally feels merciful. This is the land that haunted every mile, the whispered promise through fever and dust. Oregon. The others rise slowly, almost afraid to believe it. Eliza holds her youngest son close, whispering something you can't hear. Caleb crouches near the riverbank, running a handful of soil through his fingers. It is dark, rich, almost black, the kind of earth that would swallow seed gladly. You remember what you left behind, clay and rock, soil that broke shovels and spirits. Here the ground seems to breathe. The first thing you notice is the silence, not the emptiness of the plains or the oppressive hush of snow, but a living quiet, the kind that carries bird calls and the rustle of leaves. You hear the faint rush of water somewhere west, perhaps a tributary of the Columbia winding toward the unseen ocean. For the first time in months, the sound of wheels and whips and coughing is gone. You stand, stretch, and feel the weight of your own body. Smaller now, ribs sharp under your palms. Your clothes hang loose, boots split at the seams. You have crossed 2,000 miles of wilderness, and it shows in every scar and callus. Yet there is something new beneath the fatigue stillness, a strange, almost dangerous peace. October 6th, the morning mist burns away slowly. As the sun climbs, golden light spills over the valley. The grass shines as if wet with honey. The caravan spreads out, exploring people walking in silence, hands brushing the tall reeds as though touching a dream. Someone finds berries, others test the stream for fish. A few, still suspicious of calm, start repairing wagon parts as if to keep from feeling too much. Humans, you realize, do not trust quiet easily. By afternoon, a small camp begins to take shape. Tents rise between fir trees, fires crackle, and the smell of boiling grain fills the air. The traders who came before you, the Hudson's Bay men, the few settlers near Oregon City, were right. The valley is temperate, the rain steady, the soil deep. You recall a line from a letter once read aloud back in Missouri, from a missionary woman who crossed the trail before any of you. It is a place where God has done his best work. You wonder if she stood where you stand now, her shoes ruined, her heart half broken. That evening, a thin rain begins to fall. It's warm, almost gentle. The drops patter against your hat like applause. You sit near the fire, listening to it hiss against coals. Eliza sews quietly beside you. Her boys asleep under a blanket, patched with every colour the journey allowed. Caleb hums a tune you've heard 100 times before. But tonight it sounds different. Less about endurance, more about arrival. You eat slowly, boiled grain, a sliver of dried meat, a handful of berries. The taste is simple and astonishing. For the first time in months, food feels like nourishment, not survival. You close your eyes between bites, letting warmth spread through your chest. Around you, laughter rises, small and disbelieving. October 8th, Fort Vancouver. A settlement at last, though smaller than rumour painted. A few rough-hewn buildings, a chapel, a storehouse, the river glinting behind them. British flags flutter above the roofs. This land still claimed for now by the Hudson's Bay Company. The clerks greet you politely, recording names, ages, origins in neat ledgers. When you give your own, you can hardly recognize the voice that speaks it. Supplies are traded, wheat for blankets, salt for news. The settlers speak of winter coming, of new arrivals every week. They say your wagon train, the Great Migration of 1843, will be remembered, though it's hard to imagine anyone remembering anything after so much silence. You buy coffee again, and when it boils, the smell nearly breaks you. That night, inside a cabin borrowed from the company storehouse, you sleep under a real roof for the first time in half a year. Rain drums softly overhead. The floor smells of pine sap and damp wool. Your last thought before sleep is not of hardship, but of small sounds, the sigh of the fire, the breath of those alive beside you. October 10th. The settlers begin marking claims, stakes driven into soft ground, rough boundaries for imagined futures. You walk through the misty fields, boots sinking in mud. Here, someone will plant wheat. There, a cabin. You can already hear hammers in the distance, the first heartbeat of civilization. But part of you hesitates. You glance back toward the east, where mountains rise like a memory of danger. The trail you carved now lies behind the horizon, already fading into legend. At midday, you climb a low hill and look down at the valley. The clouds part for a moment, and sunlight spills across the fields in long, trembling beams. Everything glows: grass, river, sky. You remember every grave, every mile, every face left behind. They are all here somehow, folded into the light. Later, at camp, someone suggests carving a memorial, a wooden post bearing the names of those lost along the way. A quiet project begins. People contribute scraps of wood, nails, a knife. The names are many. Some you know, some you never learned. When the carving is done, the letters are uneven but tender. The youngest child in camp ties a ribbon at the top. It flutters in the breeze like a soul refusing to rest. As evening falls, the air turns gold. You sit with the others by the fire, watching the smoke rise straight into a clear sky. No storms tonight, no sickness, only the low murmur of voices, the occasional crack of a twig, the long sigh of the forest. Someone passes a tin cup of warm cider. You drink, and for a moment the world stops moving. October 12th, 1843. A week since the crossing, and already the trail feels like myth. The wagons are parked in a wide ring, not for defense, but for comfort. Children chase each other through grass. The oxen graze freely, ribs no longer visible. The smell of wood smoke clings to everything. You realize that life, even after all this, insists on continuing. That night, you lie beneath the stars one last time. The canopy of branches sways gently above you. The river hums nearby, steady and low. You think of the beginning, Independence, Missouri, the muddy streets, the bell that called you forward. It seems impossibly distant, like another life. You think of those who didn't reach this place, and feel the weight of their absence settle like dew. Yet beneath that sorrow is something vast and quiet: gratitude. You breathe slowly, matching your rhythm to the rustle of the leaves. The earth beneath you is cool, the blanket heavy, the air full of pine. Every sense that once ached from fear now relaxes into peace. Somewhere beyond the trees, an owl calls once, soft and low. The fire dies down to coals. Eliza hums to her boys in the tent beside you. Caleb's fiddle plays a final faltering note before silence. The smoke rises, thin and grey, disappearing into the stars. You let your eyes close. The Oregon Trail, that river of dust and death, fades behind your eyelids. What remains is breath, warmth, stillness. You've made it. You're alive. The road is gone, but its rhythm still echoes faintly in your pulse: creak, sigh, step, breath. You're safe now. The air smells of rain and cedar. The wind moves gently through the grass, a lullaby written by the land itself. And as your breathing slows, the world that once demanded everything begins to fade. The fire, the voices, the trail, even the ache in your limbs, all dissolve into softness. There is only quiet now, only rest. You're safe. You're home. Let the night take you. Let the long road finally sleep. Sweet dreams.